Well, I'm going to make kind of a fun video today. I'm going to make a video about Joseph, okay? Who's Joseph? Well, we have this guy named Abraham. He was a Chaldean. No, he was not a Jew. Abraham was an old dude. God told him he would be blessed and have many children that would become many nations. Like the sand on the shore, like the stars in the sky. Well, his wife really didn't think that was possible either, but Abraham did. And his wife suggested, well, why don't you have a child with Hagar, our servant? And he did. Name was Ishmael. But that really wasn't God's plan, because Sarah was going to have a kid, Sarai. And she did. And that kid's name, as I understand, is Isaac. And I believe his name is Isaac because when God, or the visiting angel, told Abraham that she was going to be with child, she laughed. They even asked her, hey, are you laughing? No, I didn't laugh. So the son's name was to laugh, or he laughed, or she laughed. Something about laughing, and that's Isaac. Isaac. So he had a son named Isaac. And that created some dilemma with his other son, and the other woman and Sarah did not get along well, of course. So at the request of Sarah, he sent the other family out, Hagar and Ishmael. And I'm sure he had become very attached to that son. And God said, I will take care of him and make him a great nation, and some other things about a sword and a donkey. I can't remember. Be some type of wild man, but he'd become a great nation. And that could very well be the father of the Arab nations. And back to Sarah's seed, Abraham's seed. So he has a child named Isaac. Isaac marries a woman named Rebecca. Rebecca has twins, Jacob and Esau. And the preferred son that God's promise would come through would be not through the Edomites, which is Esau's descendants, but would come through Israelites, or the Jacobites. The term Jacobite is used, actually. It's kind of funny. If you go to Scotland, you will see that term used, Jacobite. They even have an old train called the Jacobite. But normally they're called the Israelites, because you see, God changed his name to Israel, which I believe means upright before God. Some people say Jacob, the original name, means supplanter or deceiver. I'm not sure about that. But at some point, maybe after he wrestled with God, they changed it to upright before God, or upright with God. And that's what Israel means. So who did he marry? Who did Jacob marry? He wanted to marry this girl named Rachel. But Rachel's dad, his name's Laban, he was a real trickster. He was a sneaky dude. And so he told Jacob, hey, you really want to marry my daughter Rachel? That's great. You just have to come work with me on my ranch, on my farm for 7 years, and she's all yours. So Jacob's like, oh boy, I would have worked 100 years for her, no problem. So he does work 7 years for her. And then at the wedding, it turns out under the veil is the sister of Rachel, Leah, the older sister, the one that Jacob didn't really want to marry. And the father says, in our culture, it's proper to marry the first girl first. So you can have Rachel as a wife too, but I'm going to have you marry Leah here, and you're going to work another 7 years. So Jacob says, okay. Well, when it comes to having children, the preferred wife, Rachel, is not giving him very many kids. But Leah is having a lot of kids, starting with Reuben, the firstborn. That name Reuben actually means, behold, a son. And then we get Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. I don't know if I got that in order. Those are all Leah's. Most of the sons are Leah's. And Rachel's quite upset because, upset doesn't cut it. She's like near death. She's upset because she can't bring forth the son. So she takes her maidservant. Now, I can't remember if it's Bilhah or Zilpah. I'll have to look that up. There's two maidservants with very similar names, and one is the maidservant for Leah, and the other is the maidservant for Rachel. So she uses her maidservant, and she has two kids. I think the kids are Dan and Naphtali. I think. I could be getting that mixed up. The other two offspring from the maidservants was Gad and Asher. So I will look that up and verify that. But finally, Rachel eventually does have kids. And by the way, after she did that thing with her maidservant, the Leah, the one who already has a bunch of kids, like, well, if you do that, I'm going to do that too. And so she had two boys born under her maidservant. And I think that's Gad and Asher. Anyway, Rachel finally does have a kid, and a very special son. It is Joseph. And I'm sure he was favored and spoiled and educated supremely by the father Jacob. You've heard the story of Joseph and the coat of many colors. Well, Joseph, the brothers were quite jealous of the favor Joseph and attention Joseph received from the father and the family. And at some point while they were out tending the flocks, Joseph, I believe, was sent out to check on them. And they had it in their minds to just kill him. Not all the brothers wanted to kill him. One of the brothers, Judah, so if they say you're a Jew, then you'd really be from Judah. Now, I want to stop and say something. When people say Jew now, what they really mean, well, they're usually really confused first. But what they mean to say is Israelite. But they really don't understand who the Israelites are. And often they don't understand that they themselves are descendants of the Israelites. But we'll get into that later. Because each tribe, you got Reubenites, you got Danites, you got Benjamites, you got Simeonites, you got Levites. And Judah is the Jewish people. And Naphtalites and Asherites, and it goes on. The tribe of Zebulun. I don't know if they call that Zebulonites. That's a pretty long name. But on and on we go. So, anyway, the Judah, the father of, and these tribes each have symbols too. They typically have 2 to 3 symbols. And the symbols come from the blessings given to each tribe by their father Jacob just before death. They're like prophetic blessings. For example, Reuben is the face of a man, or it's shown as a shirtless man with a club. Simeon is generally a castle. Why? Because they had done this terrible thing with Shechem, and we'll get into that later. And a lot of people believe that a lot of Reuben's descendants are, he's kind of like the father of many French people. And there's some evidence that Simeon is the father of a lot of Spaniards over the Iberian Sea. And the Iberian Sea has a root that's the same as the root for Hebrew, which is Eber. And it's a couple spellings of that, and that means to cross over. And, of course, the Levites, they were like the priests, like Moses and Aaron. They were not allowed to own property. They were supposed to be cared for and taken care of by the other tribes. There's lots of theories on that. The most interesting one, I think, is a lot of Levites later became gypsy people. What are some of the other symbols? Dan has multiple symbols because the prophecy was like, Dan, you will be an adder in the path and to cause an uprising horse. So the symbol of Dan is the eagle, also the snake, also the uprising horse without a rider. The horse with the rider is typically the tribe of Gad. And Gad means a troop. And a lot of times with Gad, you'll see tents because it's like a military troop. Interestingly, when you put each one of these sons was born and named by either Rachel or Leah, even the maidservant sons. And whenever a son was born, she would give it a name for what she was going through. So like Leah was very frustrated that the husband did not really love her. So she would name the kid like, behold a son, when she had Reuben. And Simeon, I think it was like, he saw that I was not loved and he blessed me. Some of them have to do with God. He heard I was in pain and he blessed me. And Judah means to praise. So I praised him. What's cool is if you put all of those statements or phrases together, which they just really just gave the kids a name for whatever they were going through. If you put those all together in a sentence, you really do get a phrase that predicts Christ quite specifically. And, it starts out something like, behold, you saw I was not loved. You heard I was not loved, but I praised you. And it goes on and on and on. And it's really cool. I mean, the whole behold the Son thing refers to Christ. But we'll get into that later. Where were we? So they wanted to kill Joseph. But Judah, a good Jew, says, hey, let's sell him and get some money instead. Maybe he just wanted to save his brother's life and he's trying to convince his brother. So they did sell him, and oddly they sold him. The sale's kind of weird because I'm missing something here. I need to go back. But I believe they sold him to some Ishmaelites, which are technically their cousins. And the Ishmaelite slave traders took him to Egypt, where probably they would get the best price for him. And he ended up working as a slave for a very wealthy man, pretty high up in Pharaoh Ramses' command, named Potiphar. And I'm going to stop right there with him ending up at Potiphar's house, and we'll continue this later. Thank you.